we should say we're not. Hi, Louise.
Hi, Sarah.
Here we are for the Adoptee's Journey from Loss and Trauma to Healing and Empowerment by Cameron Lee Small. We are on chapter 5, Processing Our Emotions. This is a big one.
Mm,
I really read it from the mind space of, okay, this is a good guide for me because it's
yes,
still processing. And he had a lot of really great,
great.
deep things to say.
Before we got on, we were saying how this hit both of us. I mean, I've been just going through my own little weird thing that we all go through. And I'm like, I still don't know how to constantly really regulate myself. And
And I liked because he talked about sort of going, you know, analyzing the things you're saying
yes,
when you're done saying them. But it starts off
mm,
right away, and we talk about this so often on the podcast, but the fact that it opens the chapter, every time I brought up my adoption with therapists, they said, I'm sure you and your family feel very lucky to have one another. It was so hard for me to speak about my anger, confusion, sometimes overwhelming sense of sadness about being adopted. This is Julia from Beneath the Mask, Understanding Adopted Teens.
yeah, that's the truth, right? Anytime we've ever brought it up, I mean, most adoptees we talk to have had this experience.
Yes.
Almost all. I mean, there are exceptions, but I think that the narrative in the public is so important. We can't say it enough, honestly, because you're really shutting children down, young
Mm-hmm.
people and adults. I mean,
And
this still
adults. Yeah.
still
Who find,
happens.
like in our case, it wasn't till we started this podcast and went, right,
Yeah,
you and I talk about how on the ice cream truck we would make jokes. Yeah, I'm adopted. I have
yeah.
abandonment issues, but never really truly connected those dots, right?
Why do we have those abandonment issues? Like, what is the core? And it's not
Yeah.
just abandonment issues. It's so deep. Like every little thing can make
Shame
you
and
spiral. Yes,
self-worth
same.
and, you
Yeah.
know, all the heavy, heavy
And
stuff.
I appreciate Cam because here he is in a religious community, very out there, who he is. And he talks about like he went through big stuff for himself, went through drinking,
Mm-hmm.
um, self damage, self harm in that way, which is very open to talk about because he's
Yep.
not all just prim and proper on he's lived this stuff.
Another adoptee statistic with substance problems.
That's right.
So many,
Yeah.
how many people have we talked to on the podcast that have gotten sober as, due to having issues? I mean, it's so common.
Yeah. Because you can't express yourself. So you find a way to drown it, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Exactly. That's really
That's,
what you have to do.
yeah. He has these, if you're reading the book with us, these wonderful key points,
Mm-hmm.
which they're all like, there's so many in there. I circle them all with like red here, but he says one of the largest threats to a child's sense of emotional awareness is an adopted family whose love was enough and whose presence in the child's life was an expression of the child's luck and good fortune. To buffer the impact of such an environment, we can take time to explore a wider range of being and thus a wide range of being connected. And I mean, I had that like everything was, you're so loved. Like you can't, okay, so you can't say anything.
Right,
So
because they're not understanding two things can coexist. Yes, I
that's
was
right.
loved, but also this,
Yep.
and
Right.
but, or whatever the expression is. That right below that is,
Hmm.
you did talk to another adoptee, Wanda, a transracial 22-year-old, and she said a common theme she heard was, I'm so encouraged by the way you speak about it without getting so angry and bitter. So there's the thing,
Yep.
as long as we are,
Soft.
calm and measured, and then people can hear us. But that why does it have to be that way? You'll be cared for if and only if you can speak without getting so angry. There's those messages
Yep.
again.
Yep. Soft sell. You have to soft sell.
Mm-hmm. And why?
I don't know. I feel it too. If I'm talking and I get animated about it with somebody, I can see them start to be like, oh, you know, that kind of look. And you're like, okay, this is why this book is so good. I want to literally carry it around and be like, let me read to you from this book. Like,
And then just little things, that
mm-hmm,
I wanted to be intimate and connected, but didn't know how. I wanted to feel cared for and loved, valued and embraced,
mm-hmm.
protected instead of targeted. All these things that
Yes. Yeah. and he gets into like your emotions are disorganized. So then he kind of starts. He gives us a whole bunch of stuff here, like a plan. Again, it is like a workbook,
He did.
honestly.
And he didn't have, he talked about,
Mm-mm.
imagine like if we had had mentors when we were young
Right.
to get through this. This is what
Yes.
he's now doing, like Angela Tucker,
Yes.
that to really be there, understanding what he lacked, what we
Yes.
lacked, and now being able to provide that for people is such a gift. It really
It is.
is. This book is such a great book to go through and give to adoptees maybe that don't know about it.
Yeah, and that's actually true too. It's true. He has this whole, he goes into rebalancing emotion. So he gives you definitions. We won't read each one, but he gives you the definitions of the emotion because if you can say it, like
Mm-hmm.
if you know what your emotion is and what it really means, then you don't have to, like the cross between I have anxiety or I feel anxiety, like all these things. So there's disintegrated, I can't talk today. Thank you. Whatever it is, emotions, value charges, emotional constellations, moral foundations, instrumental and terminal values. I mean, all these things where I'm reading them going, wow, like this is really interesting. You know what I mean? To pull out and label things.
Yes, to pull out and label things. And his key point is, when you feel acute or chronic patterns of concerning emotions, ask yourself which one of your values may be in a
Hmm.
state of tension with how you expect or need the world to be. We process our emotions to discover more about ourselves, identify what forces of antagonism threw us off, and return to balance.
Yeah, it's big. Oh, and then there's
Yeah.
the being anxious versus feeling anxious,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
normal anxiety, neurotic anxiety. How
Which
do you
he does
know?
say, he
Yeah.
doesn't like the word
Yes.
neurotic necessarily.
Hmm.
I feel like that is a weirdly patriarchal
Oh,
word that is always only
put
ascribed
on women
to
often.
women, right? That's my visceral reaction when I hear the word neurotic,
Yeah. Um,
or hysterical. Those are
yeah.
words always that,
Right. We might pass out from vapors.
right? And I
He's
like his key
yeah,
point where it's the goal is not to become less angry. The goal is to learn how to self-regulate with more balance or flexibility.
yeah. That's what I was feeling this morning. Then I was reading this, going, "Wow, that's kind of what I'm going through this week." But for no reason, something will throw you off, and I'm
Hmm.
like, "Wait, I'm not as regulated as I think." I always think, "Oh, I'm pretty good," until I'm not. And I'm 56, right? Imagine if we did have the mentors. I
I
always think, where
know.
would we be with that? We'd be in a whole different. Maybe we wouldn't be doing this though, and this is so important. So
Yeah, it really is. It's
yeah,
when we hear from people just on a daily, multiple times
yes,
daily,
yeah,
and we don't always have the bandwidth to make a phone call. Like we get a
I
request
know.
for someone to call and like, oh gosh, when? But we care and we try to be uh, present as much as we can for everybody.
Yeah. And find the right resource sometimes for people that write us that we're not the right resource, but we try to help
Yes.
because I do feel like we've taken on this mantle, right? A little bit, everybody in this space. There's more key terms: attachment, somatic attachment narrative. That was interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Developmental trauma, complex trauma, which you and I have discussed. Betrayal
Oh
trauma.
yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
never heard that. I've actually never heard it like that, which is
Like
kind of,
it, well, that also extends to cultural betrayal.
yes.
Like you're just, like Cam pulled
Yeah.
from Korea and placed into, milk white Wisconsin.
And you're no longer Korean. Like,
Right. And I thought it was really poignant when he talked about how what he was fed,
mm,
as here he was 18 months old or whatever, however old he was, and then fed this just foreign food, that he'd been used to his
of
own food with,
course.
and you don't have you don't have the
No,
language to be able to say
no.
what is happening here. It's just so traumatic.
It is traumatic because we worry when we have our own kids, every little thing is so perfect, right? We try so hard. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
so sad. There's a lot more neuroception, extroception. These are words I didn't know. Introception, knew that, but I didn't really understand them. Mirror neurons. It's a lot. It's
It's a, yeah.
Please read with us, people.
Um, there's just a few things because this is all about processing, right? This
Right, right.
chapter is
Yeah,
when adoption is negotiated by adopters and professionals as a purely win-win-win situation, it's likely the child will not be given the space to explore any non-winning emotions they
yeah,
experience. Many children and adults with a history of trauma struggle to communicate what they feel because they are unable to recognize what their physical sensations mean and they lack the opportunities to learn how.
yeah.
Adopted bodies may not evoke or signal to others a need for care.
I mean that is so true because if I get into upset mode, I almost shut down mentally and verbally.
Oh, oh yeah.
Well,
I
you and I
rem
both know this about
hmm
each other, but yeah,
I'm
go
a
ahead.
lot better than for
Mm-hmm.
sure, a lot better than I was, but I have clear memories of, someone I was involved with and like he said, wow, it's like I just watched this wall go over you,
Yeah,
just he could see it in real time as I just shut down.
yeah. I get very like everything's wrong. You know what I mean? If there's a problem, all of a sudden I'm like, wait, and then I go right away into I'm going to push you away, and I'm also going to be really mad, and I'm not sure what I'm mad about. I'm searching and searching for these
Uh-huh.
emotions, and this is I love learning more about all of this. The last thing we talked about naming emotions, a key point. When you can sense and name an emotion, you can use it as a prompt to unearth stories and questions held by your body and soul. I mean, that's the truth. You have to name something to know what's wrong with you.
Right.
You know?
And this I thought was so true. With short-term solutions and temporary fixes, staying wounded often feels less painful than the work of healing, right? But
Right.
ultimately, the healing is way more rewarding in life.
Yep.
You get more.
You and I have said this. I almost, before we came out of the fog, quote unquote, the fog, it was easier. It was easier, but
It
it's
was
not
easier.
easier. But it's not easier. I like
No,
I would never trade where we are now.
I
But
wouldn't either.
it's almost like seeing the puppets, the puppeteer behind the puppet show. It's like, oh, you'll never get that back.
Right. You can't unsee.
No. Yeah.
Well, and then here to close it out, the last key point, being present doesn't always mean a peaceful, pleasant time. Sometimes it
Mm.
means stepping into a moment of terror. If a child can only count on someone when things are going well, they're not really counting, they're catering. The same rings
Ah,
true for adults.
love that. If they're
So
not
good.
counting, they're catering.
Right. Yes.
I can't wait to meet Cam. This is
I
great.
know. I'm excited to meet him. So next week we are on to chapter 6, telling our stories.
Yeah, and speaking of a story, our friend Kate's coming in. Boy,
Yeah. Yeah.
big
Kate
one.
is a friend too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All
See you in
right.
a
See
minute.
you in a minute.